Hey, good Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Trail Tidbits, a Volquest.com mini podcast on Tennessee recruiting. I'm Eric Kane with the expert Matt Ray joining us here today. Tennessee getting ready for Arkansas down in over in Fayetteville this Saturday night, 7:30. This is a kick. It's going to be broadcasted on ABC. But of course, as we say every single week, recruiting never stops. So over the course of the next 10, 15 minutes, we're going to check in with a couple of Tennessee commits, get an update on a running back target that Tennessee's after, and some 2027 names to watch here and who might be falling in on campus with some 26s over the next couple of weeks. Of course, Tennessee is at Arkansas and then coming back to Neyland Stadium, going to be there for a while. Games against Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and all that over the course of the next month or so. So, Matt Ray, let's go ahead and get started. A running back nearing his decision. Tennessee probably playing catch-up here. Ousmane Kromah, running back, of course, from Lee County down there in Georgia. What's the latest?
Yeah, so I think last week Ousmane Kromah decided to push his announcement back another week. Was originally slated to announce on September 28th and decided to push that back into October. Darrell Sims was in Lee County to check on him during the evaluation period, as they're allowed to do during this time. I don't think that had any big factor in Kromah pushing back his decision, but it did give Tennessee some time at least to continue working in this recruitment. A guy that, Tennessee hosted for an official visit in the summer, and by all accounts, that visit went well. I think had Tennessee have had an opportunity to get him back to campus at some point this fall, it would have been even better for the Vols ahead of his decision. It just didn't work out that way. And as you said, Eric, it continues to just feel like Tennessee's playing catch up here. But a guy that they're going to push for until the end with Ousmane Kromah. It continues to feel like Georgia has some momentum here at the time of this recording. Auburn has been in and out of this recruitment heavily at times. They're probably Georgia's biggest competition at this point. Florida State's another one of those schools hanging around. So those are the four hats that you should see on the table on Saturday, most likely when he makes a decision. But right now, Tennessee continuing to play catch-up for a guy like Ousmane Kromah, but a decision that is lingering here that is going on into the fall, so one at least worth noting here on Trail Tidbits.
Yeah, how important is it for Tennessee to add another back in this class?
Yeah, they would certainly like to pair another back with Justin Baker. In the spring, late spring, early summer, a lot of focus on Shakai Mills-Knight, who was drawn to Ole Miss by what he believed that their depth chart set up very nicely for him. Tennessee made a big run there at one point and was definitely in the mix. He had a previous relationship with Darrell Sims, but Mills-Knight opted for Oxford. Like I said, Browning Kromah on an official visit. Continue to try with DeJuan Morris. Out from Mid-State and Oakland. It just continues to feel like that one's a long shot at this point. He has to show up on campus. Can Tennessee get him to campus? I mean, it's a few hours away. It's easier for him to get from Nashville to Knoxville than it is from Nashville to Southern California to see the Trojans again, at least. So a couple of big games coming up, as you mentioned, Alabama, Florida, Kentucky there in November. So Tennessee will work to get DeJuan Morris back to campus. And if they do, then things might become real. But until that point, it feels like a long shot. But Tennessee would certainly like to add another back in this class. And we'll see any other names pop up. But right now, that's kind of where things are for the running back position for Tennessee in 2025.
So we look at some running back targets. Now let's shift our focus to some current commits in the class of 2025. And, we're going to, kind of throw out some names here, and I want you to give an update on them. But I think the important thing here is, and this goes without, you don't even have to expand on this, but if you have guys committed in your class and you have Georgia coming after them, Alabama coming after them, some of the other SEC powers coming after your guys, as a fan, sure, you can worry a little bit, but that's where you want to be in. Why? Well, why do you want those guys, those teams trying to come after your guys? Because you're recruiting the right caliber player. And for so many years, Tennessee was not recruiting that to that caliber, right? But now you are, and so it's always a battle. That's why you and AP always say, well, I mean, it feels good now, but it's a thrill a minute. And even when you get them, committed, it's can you hold on till National Signing Day? And that's why you see all these visits happening in early December when things open up, going to see guys who have been longtime commits because you just never know. So with that being said, Let's look at Jaden Harmon. Jaden Harmon, of course, linebacker. He's a top or just outside the 100 according to On3. Been committed here for a little bit at Tennessee, but he did take a visit to Alabama. What is the latest with Jaden Harmon, Tennessee's linebacker commit?
Yeah, so Jaden Harmon was in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. And if you watched any college football or any highlights after Saturday, you know how electric the environment was, everything that
I
unfolded
was going to
between
say, well, I mean, he
Alabama
didn't
and
see
Georgia.
much at that game, right?
I mean, you know how big of a game that was, on paper beforehand, and then it lived up to the hype. So recruits obviously had a great time at Alabama, but I think for Jaden Harmon, the more that we've checked around on this since that visit, since he's made it home, I think he continued to have good dialogue with Tennessee during that visit. He's continued to have good dialogue with Tennessee since that visit. And expect him back to campus for the Florida game unofficially, and then back again the following week for the Alabama game for what will be an official visit. Just as Tennessee did when Jaden Harmon committed to Alabama earlier in the year, Alabama just trying to play the long game. They let the dust settle. After he flipped to Tennessee, and they just continued to pick up communication. And I think Jaden's a guy that is pretty well versed in the process, wants to make sure that he gets all the answers and sees everything that he wants to see. And part of that is seeing every school that you're highly considering. Alabama could just said, "Hey, look, we're gonna go a different direction than Jaden Harmon." After he flipped, and they didn't. They continued to keep their foot pressed down on the gas, and obviously there's a relationship there. He didn't just choose them out of the blue the first time. But I think for Tennessee, he's built a strong relationship with William Inge, multiple people on the staff, and I think he's seeing more and more from Tennessee how he fits into what they want at that inside linebacker role. I think, a guy like Christian Gass, a top 100 prospect in the On3 rankings for this 2025 cycle, has freakish ability, but he's going to slot into a lot of different positions for Tennessee potentially over time, given his frame. I think Jaden Harmon, given his ability to run and play in space, is absolutely what Tennessee wants, priority number one in terms of that inside linebacker fit. And, I think before he committed to Tennessee, he talked to multiple guys, really evaluated things. I think it'll be good for him to get back to Knoxville in a couple of weeks. But I think right now, Tennessee continues to feel okay as the calendar turns over to October here.
So kind of the same question with running back, but you're going from one commit looking to add maybe two to linebacker. You got two, and we know that Georgia's, all over Christian Gass, and, Bama trying to, get back in, obviously, with Jaden Harmon and some others. And this was asked in the Monday Night Chat. Will Tennessee want to add a third linebacker? And if so, is that a matter of playing it safe or just add a third in the class to pair with these two really good athletes?
No, I think it's a matter of adding a third in the class to pair with these two guys. If you can get the right fit, I think Tennessee would like to do that. Obviously, AP wrote about Austin Howard last week, in-state linebacker from out in Bartlett. Tennessee's continued to have some good dialogue with him, have a chance to get him to campus later in the month. Yeah, I mean, John Reed said it best. I mean, he just makes people disappear. Jaden Harmon's an eraser. But with Austin Howard, I mean, he's a guy that I think does a lot of things really well. Has a high ceiling. Obviously committed to Mississippi State right now, but Tennessee will get him to campus hopefully at some point this fall and have a chance to swing there. Is the plan, and they'll continue to talk to some other linebackers just kind of as the numbers work out. So we'll see what happens and how everything goes with that. But I think for Tennessee right now, they would like to add another linebacker and start with getting a guy like Austin Howard back to campus later in the month.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off right there. I was just, while you were talking, I was just watching his highlight tape that we were playing up here. And I mean, he had one ferocious hit there in the backfield, and I just couldn't stay quiet because I love, big hits in football. It feels like they're throwing flags at every big hit in football. You can't play defense anymore. Anyway, let's go from one commit to another. Some good news for Tennessee. You caught up with Marion Dy, talented edge player, 4-star, top. I think he's 51 in the On300. Industry rankings has him at 77th. Really talented player, Marion Dy. Some good news in terms of what he told you about where his standing is with the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Marion Dy his recruitment was one that was never going to die down either. A guy from the Midwest, there in Indiana that Ohio State hosted for an official visit. Michigan hosted for an official visit. Purdue really prioritized, made a big swing at one point. Um, and as the season's going on, other schools have reached out to him. LSU's reached out. USC's reached out. He's got text messages from these staffs just wanting to check in. And for him, he chose Tennessee very quickly after official visits. And it was because of a strong comfort level. He was down here in April, and then he was back again in June. And when he got home, he realized he did not need to see anymore. A strong relationship with Coach Chop, Lavorne Harbin, Rodney Garner, Josh Heupel, Mike Eckler, the entire staff. Tim Banks was really big, I think, during that initial visit in the spring for Marion Dy. So he didn't want to waste any time. He wanted to pick Tennessee. He didn't want the process to wage on anymore, if you will. And then, these schools have reached out, and he knows. I mean, he kind of laughingly said, "Yeah, I know it's not going to stop. Schools are going to text me until the end, try to call me, try to get me on campus, but I'm 100% locked into Tennessee." And one thing he made very clear to me was that Tennessee has recruited him basically like he is uncommitted. They call him, they check on him every single day, every single opportunity that they get. That's from Josh Heupel down the staff. And I think it goes back to in the summer, Tennessee had several highly rated edge rushers on campus, and Marion Dy was the top of that board for them. So they're continuing to recruit him just like that, like he's not committed. As you see right there, you watch him run this play down from the backside.
Whew.
And this is a guy that's 265 pounds, deceivingly, and he can move. He may push up to 290 pounds by the time he's ready to play in college, just because of what he has from a frame standpoint. A really impressive wingspan, so an impressive defender. Pretty easy to see why Tennessee covets him so highly.
I think, the average fan, when you're watching football, you don't appreciate a lot of the attributes for a defensive end. Like, sure, you want to stuff the run, you want to set the edge, you want to get after the quarterback and bring him down as a sack. But when run goes away from you, okay, you got to play that piano, squeeze the edge, and work your way down, to eliminate cutback lanes. But also, when you got stretch or toss going out the other way to the other sideline, to get on your motor and chase that sucker down. There are so many great tackles made from the backside just by effort plays, right? And
Yep.
just watching this highlight tape, and I've seen it before, but Dy plays with that type of effort, and of course that's something that Tennessee really likes about his game. Talked a lot about some 2025 guys and, running back target and 2 commits. 2026s are going to be making their way on campus, once Tennessee gets back in town for Florida, Alabama, so on and so forth. But some early names in the 2027 class. We've been asked about it a couple of times in the Mailbag podcast. Never too early to look ahead. Tennessee's obviously looking and try to establish themselves with several individuals in the 27 class. Who were some names that we should get to know right now in the early going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's never too early to look ahead nowadays in terms of the recruiting world. If you missed last week's episode of Trail Tidbits, we listed, gosh, I don't know how many 2026 recruits that will be to town in October, and we're already starting to hear more and more of some guys that will be out here in November, like Taj Overton, a top defensive line priority, Zion Gibson, Albert Hill, 2 really highly sought-after corners that'll be here right there in the 1st of November. But in terms of 2027, Eric, I mean, Tennessee started to extend more and more offers, and it's another one of those classes that the Vols have some connections in, but they're going to be in on for some big-name players. In any class, it always feels like a little cliche to say, but it does start with quarterback. Tennessee's extended a small number of offers at the quarterback position to this point. I think 3, and two early names to know there, in my opinion, are Trey Taylor and Trent Seaborn. Tennessee offered both of those guys. Taylor earlier in the week and Seaborn in August. 2 guys that already have 20-plus offers as sophomores in high school at quarterback. Seaborn's been a phenom in Alabama for some time, since he led Thompson to a state championship in that highest classification of football there as an 8th grader. And then Trey Taylor's continued to pick up every offer imaginable. So those are 2 early names to know, 2 guys that Seaborn will visit campus for the Florida game. Taylor's trying to make it to campus later in the year as well. At running back, obviously Tennessee is very interested in in-state 2027 prospect at Baylor, David Gabriel Gorges, Georges, a guy that, man, you watch him run, you do not think this kid is just a sophomore in high school. He's a perfect complement to Shakai Mills-Knight there at Baylor, and a guy that really already has another gear for a sophomore. And then Tennessee over the summer hosted David Segura the third, a guy that is over in South Carolina that's already made a lot of plays as a sophomore. At wide receiver, I think it's still pretty early in the cycle for Tennessee there. They've handed out a lot of offers, to this point to some of the upper, the bigger name guys in the class that have already flashed. But I think Tennessee's probably continuing to evaluate there. We'll see who shows up on campus in terms of 2027s, here in the next few weeks. I think we'll learn more about that position. Kind of the same with tight end, but now at tight end, I think Tennessee is one of many schools that will, try to be involved with Mark Bowman out at Modern Day in California, a guy who, as a sophomore, is already drawing comparisons to Brock Bowers. Some of it's obviously the California connection, but they move similarly. They have kind of that same frame and do a lot of the same things with their ability to run after catch. And then Malik Howard, a nearby tight end at Tennessee, offered earlier in this earlier in the year at Oak Ridge, is a name that they'll continue to keep tabs on, in my opinion, as the process goes on. Across the offensive line, another one of those positions I think Tennessee will continue to evaluate. It's kind of early, to know. They've sent out a few offers. Kelsey Adams from down in Georgia is a guy that for a sophomore is already massive. He's probably a top 20 player in the On3 rankings at this point, I believe, for the 2027 class, around 6'7" already. He was at Clemson over the weekend. He'll be to Tennessee for the Florida game. Another guy I think Tennessee will keep tabs on is Junior Saunders from Woodbury Forest up in Virginia, a guy that they hosted during a camp in June. He measured in very well, extremely long arms, and then had a really strong camp showing. And then along the defensive line, again, one of those tough positions to evaluate. But two guys that Tennessee and pretty much every other school in the country will be in on are LaDainian Guyton, who is number one overall in the On3 rankings, an edge from down in Savannah, Georgia, really high motor, can really go, has talked about his interest in Tennessee, and that, his interest has been caught in Tennessee because of a guy like James Pierce and what Tennessee's been able to do with him and how consistently productive they've been up front. And then earlier in the week, I had a chance to catch up a 2027 edge, David Jacobs Jr., a top 15 player in the country already for the cycle, an impressive frame at around 6'5", 220 pounds as a sophomore down in Georgia. And Tennessee's got a connection there. His dad, David Jacobs Sr., originally in the 90s chose between Georgia and Tennessee had made a strong push there for him. And, Rodney Garner had, just left Tennessee and was over at Georgia, and David Jacobs Sr. chose to go play for Rodney Garner at Georgia. David Jacobs Jr. referred to Rodney Garner as like an uncle to him, like family. There's a really strong connection there. During, Rodney's time back at Tennessee, the Jacobs have been to Knoxville a handful of times. They will be back for the Alabama game, and he's really excited to get there and see more of Tennessee, build a relationship with more coaches. One thing he did tell me earlier in the week was that Tennessee has his favorite player, right now in all of football, and that's James Pierce. So, again, those results, as we've talked about before, matter on the field, and then just a couple of other names to note. Keyshawn Bowman, an in-state guy out at Brentwood Academy, right now viewed as an athlete, but Tennessee's extended an offer there to him. Joshua Dobson over in South Carolina is a highly rated cornerback. Look for him to get back to Tennessee at some point this fall. And then, of course, Cooper Witten, the son of Tennessee legend Jason Witten, who does a little bit of everything for his dad's football team out in Texas, just plays safety, plays linebacker, can come down in the box and, play as an edge. He's a guy that, man, he was all-state as a freshman and is building on that as a sophomore. Makes a lot of plays, out there in Texas. He watched Tennessee play Oklahoma, and he'll be back at some point either for the Florida game or the Alabama game. So, again, not a huge amount of people to know, but it's early. It's 2027, but recruiting never rests.
Yeah, not a huge amount of people to know, yet you just rattled off about 25 names. So that's Matt Ray for you right there, the hardest working guy in the biz, man. Awesome stuff. Great job. And, of course, we got a number of names to look forward to 2027. 26 is going to be in town over the next couple of weeks. 25, still trying to finalize this class. Tennessee needs to hold on to a couple. And you guys have had tons. You and AP both have had tons of great recruiting content over on the site throughout the bye week and early on to this week. And it's only heating up, man. It feels like, June and, the June official visits, the busiest time for recruiting. I mean, it's a busy time, but literally even though it's in season, a lot of updates, a lot of these guys coming to Neyland Stadium for the first time. So no better place to find all that and more than at Volquest.com and right here on Trail Tidbits. Every Wednesday here at Volquest.com, it is a mini recruiting podcast. This one wasn't so many. This is about a full podcast length, but a lot of great stuff. He is Matt Ray. I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for joining us as well. Tennessee is going to be at Arkansas this weekend, and we'll have you all covered right here at Volquest.com.